Good afternoon, Tommaso.
Good afternoon, Santiago. Good to meet you.
Nice to see you again. By the way, maybe you can help me to explain what is a revamping project within the solar project and what's the difference versus repowering?
That's a very good question. So when you do a revamping, typically you change just some components of a project, just only the modules, only the inverters, or maybe both, but you don't change the original capacity or the total installed capacity. That remains, right? Whereas when you do a repowering, then you actually change also the capacity of the project, so you can increase the megawatts on the project. So there's a substantial difference there.
Based on your experience, when do you think is the best time to consider a revamping project?
Well, that actually, a revamping project, that depends on how has the project aged over time, right? So that depends on the degradation of the components. So that really can vary. But typically what you would consider is projects which are 8 or 10 years or more, they typically would become eligible for a revamping, and that is because projects that were built at that time were using technologies which have been surpassed today with much higher performing components. So typically projects 8 years or plus, 10 years or plus, those I would consider to be analyzed to see whether revamping can be beneficial.
What are the improvements you expect from a revamping? I mean, what the customer looking for? To improve energy, to increase production, reduce costs?
That also depends on what components are going to change, or whether you do a revamping or a repowering. If you do a revamping and you just change modules and inverters, maybe the cabling with higher performing equipment, today you can reach up to 20% increase. Now, if you then add also a design change in the project, then you, for example, go from a fixed tilt to a tracking system, then you can add an additional maybe 20% performance, so you can actually max up to 40% if you do both.
Based on all these comments, what are you think are the main points or the main takeaways that people need to have into account when addressing a revamping project?
Well, typically you have 3 very important points. One is the financial or economical aspect of the project. The client, he expects that the revamping or the repowering is going to increase the yield or the energy generation of the plant, with the objective to increase the ROI of the project. So financial component, very important. But you also have a technical component. The technical component typically is the compatibility between the different components. If you do a revamping, whether you only change the modules or only change the inverters, you still have to make sure that there's a compatibility between all the components. That's a lot of engineering, that's what we do. But then you have a third point, and that is regulation. You always have to consider conformance to laws or to local requirements, so the regulatory part is very, very important.
That was the other question I have. I think recycle is a main topic within Europe nowadays, so replacement of the component, cycle of these must be taken into account for sure, right?
Although at BayWa RE, we ourselves do not take care of the recycling, we still have to coordinate between our client, who is the owner of all these components, and then the companies who physically do the recycling. So we have to do all this coordination.
What about warranties? Does BayWa RE provide the same type of warranties that from a greenfield project?
I would say basically yes, right? So when we do a revamping projects, we do provide to our clients typically a performance ratio, PR warranty. We can also provide a yield warranty on the energy produced by the project, yes.
What about BayWa RE experience? I guess apart from Spain, you are active in other countries in Europe or in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Within the European region, apart from Spain, we are active in Italy, in France, UK and I, and in Germany. These are our 5 main markets. And in these markets, we are operating with local teams. We like to call them multidisciplinary teams, because that's where we locally do all the engineering, all the procurement, and then also the execution of the projects.
Thank you very much, Tommaso. It's always a pleasure to share your knowledge with us. Thank you.
It's my pleasure being here. Thank you for having me, Santiago.